Hi, I'm Bob Bourke and welcome to Mechanic at Large. On this week's show, we're going to show you how to fix something that every car has got, and that's a universal joint. We're going to work on a conventional rear-wheel drive car, and we're going to show you how to change this little piece in your car, your U-joint, that transmits power down to your back axle. So I hope you'll join us after this break. We'll be right back and we'll get started on that U-joint. All right, welcome back. We'll get right into this show because we've got a lot of things to do today. A universal joint, what is it? It's not a place you go to hang around for everybody in the universe or anything. It's a special little mechanical invention that wasn't invented by Mr. Universal or Mr. Joint, but it's used in a lot of power transmission devices, and it's to transmit power over angles. Now, you say, why do we have to do that? Well, let's look at your standard automobile. We got wheels at the front and wheels at the back. In the front we got an engine, big or little or whatever. We got a transmission down here behind that. We have to get the power from here to here. And now you say, Bob, well, why don't we just hook a big shaft from here to here? And that would work all right except for one thing. In North American cars and the cars that you and I drive, we demand a little bit of comfort. And to make that comfort, we got to have the wheels moving independently. Now that means that our power transmission line from here to here has to be able to go up and down, all right, so that when the back wheel goes over a bump, we don't break off the drive shaft at the engine. So what automotive engineers did many years ago is invent a universal joint. And what this does, we have one here behind the transmission and one back here at the differential. And this allows our engine drive, or our transmission, the drive coming off our transmission, to transmit power at an angle. All right, so we use two universal joints, one there and one there. And that means we can transmit power at an angle up to about 15 or 20 degrees and allow this to float. Now universal joints are very durable things and cause very little trouble. But you'll find if you have a standard transmission or a four-wheel drive truck, you'll have more need to change your universal joints, because every time you shift that transmission, you put a little bit of tension on that joint. Now we're going to go underneath our car today and take off the drive shaft. We're going to take the complete drive shaft out to do that. This here is a slip joint, and we'll show you that when we get underneath the car. There's a slip joint right here in the back of the transmission, and down here we have two little caps that hold this onto the back pinion on the differential. What we have are little clamps, little saddle clamps, and we're going to go back, and these hold the universal joints, and I'm going to go back and take off 4 little bolts. We're going to bring the whole drive shaft up here onto the bench and show you how to change the U-joints. Let's get underneath our car. I got my metric wrench here. This is a metric car like most of the more recent ones. Our U-joint we'll just leave there, and we'll go down underneath and take off our drive shaft. I've got this car lifted up again. My back is sore again, but I got it up one more time. Now here's the drive shaft I mentioned, and it flexes, or allows flex between the differential back here and the transmission up on that end. Now here's the little caps that I mentioned. You can see in this U-joint. This is live television, folks. We didn't take this thing apart. And we're going to do that right now. These 4 little saddle clamps, we're just going to undo, I hope. Yeah, we got no problem there. We've got 4 little bolts to take off. And we'll be able to take that drive shaft with this universal joint right here completely off. Now we want to hang on to these and not lose them, because on some cars they're fine threaded or special bolts. There's the first one coming out. I'm going to put that in my pocket. I've got one up here where you can't see. Oh, we're in luck so far. We have 2 of them that aren't too bad a shape. Although sometimes you'll get these pretty tight. And that's because they're down in the road salt, hanging down here underneath the car. And you'd be feeling a little rough if you had been down here for 100,000 miles too. There's the little saddle clamp. If we can get a look at that, that's the little saddle clamp I just mentioned with the bolt. And I'm going to put that in my pocket too, so we don't lose it. And now you can probably see better on this side. There's the other saddle clamp, and we'll take it off. This wonderful metric wrench we got here. Love that metric system. We'll undo that. And that'll pop back from there in the pocket again. And we got one more. Now what you may have to do sometimes, folks, on these, you may have to rotate your drive shaft, and the easiest way to do that is to jack up one wheel of your car, and you'll be able to turn this freely. Your transmission cannot be in park when you're doing this, because if you're in park, this drive shaft is locked and there's going to be tension on it. Now, I'll get this one undone if I can. Oh, it's hard for me to do this when I can't see it and you can. If you would just phone in and tell me why I'm not getting this off. Like I say, you can see it better than I can. There we go. As I say, completely unrehearsed, folks, complete with dust, dirt, road salt, etc. Now, one thing I should mention to you that's very important, I think I said it before, you should have the car, you should have your emergency brake locked on when you're doing this. Otherwise, your car can move on you. All right, I've got that last little saddle off, and I'm going to put that in my pocket. Now, what we have to do here is slide this ahead, and I want to just take you up and show you how this fits into the transmission for a second, and I'll show you why we can slide this ahead to free this up. If we can just come down the drive shaft, down here, here you see our front universal joint. If we can get a shot of that, that's the front universal joint. Now this is the back of your automatic transmission housing, and right in there we have a seal. And this is the sliding shaft, and you'll be able to see it better when we get it on the bench. And that allows this whole drive shaft to flex in and out a little bit as the differential moves up and down. Okay, our distance from here to our differential actually shortens. So this is a little sliding spline, and we'll show that to you when we get on the bench. Now when I pull this ahead, this spline is going to allow us to move into there, and then when we want to take our drive shaft out, we'll pull this right out, and we're going to lose a little bit of oil here. So I'm going to put a pail right under here now, then we'll go to the back, slide this in, and slide it back, and we'll be in business. Let's go to the back of the car. Okay, I've got to pop this loose out of here, to slip it ahead on that joint, and I don't know if this little bar is going to do it. There we are. I'll just slide that ahead, and down comes the drive shaft, and we'll slide it out, just like that, and there's our drive shaft. And there's the slip joint. I'm going to take this over to the bench, clean it up a little bit, and get ready how to show you how to change these U-joints. We'll be back after this message. Welcome back. I've just been cleaning up this U-joint. I want to point out one thing to you right here. That's this sliding shaft I mentioned to you and run to the car. This is it right here. And if we can get a close-up shot in here, you can see there's splines. Now I mentioned that we want that shaft to be able to slide in and out a little bit to change the overall length of this drive shaft. You can also see down here, if we can get a shot of that, there's a master spline in here, and you may have to look in your vehicle for that, but there's the one spline in there, so this will only fit one way. And we do that so that the drive shaft is what we call phased. Now that means that these U-joints are lined up properly, and if you have a universal shaft that's out of phase, you'll get a thrumming or a harmonic vibration or a vibration in your drive line. Okay? So the manufacturer puts that master spline into this sliding shaft so that we get everything in the right relation to the differential. Now we're going to take this apart. This is going to require a little pounding and a little working here. These universal joints, this is an original equipment universal. It's never been taken off. And what the manufacturers do to hold these little caps in place, they inject plastic right in through here. And you can see there's a little plastic knob here and a little plastic knob here. And those are the manufacturer injects plastic into a little groove in this cap. And that actually holds that universal joint in place for all its life. On the ones that we're going to put in, we have a little groove here, and we're going to use a snap ring because we don't have the machinery to inject that in there. Now, I'm going to take this apart. And what we have to do to shear that plastic is set this up on something real solid. We're going to close that vise so it's just big enough to let that little cap pass through. We're going to set that up like that, and I'm going to give a little shot with a hammer. Okay, we're going to put a big punch there, have this blocked up, have everything secure, and we're going to hit that about like that. Tighten my vise up just a little more, We want this to be able to pass through, okay? We've got to keep our vise open enough to let that joint pass through. We're going to hit that again. Matter of fact, that's sticking out a little bit, so I can probably break that loose just by hitting it like this. Or like that. Yeah, we've broken that loose. Now you may be able to see that has started to go down. Now we're going to drive that as far as we can with a punch. And what we've done here is we've sheared that plastic off. We've sheared the plastic and we moved that joint. Now you can see it sticking out this side. If we can get a close-up shot, there's what's left over of the plastic that was holding that joint together. Now, I don't know, for some reason manufacturers always do this to us, but you can never move that yoke or that joint far enough to get this cap off. So you've got to get a pair of pliers right now. And we're going to grab a pair of pliers and pull that out of there. If I can find some, we'll use some good vice grips here. I borrowed these from a friend of mine 23 episodes ago. I haven't given them back to him yet. He knows where to find them. Right on this channel at this time every week. Okay, we got to get that loose out of there. And these are hard metal. So we just got to hook onto that and wiggle a little bit. And in theory, it's supposed to come out. Let me put this in the vise. We got a vise here and we're not using it. Let's just do that. We'll hold that there. Okay, now we've driven this cap as far as we can. So now we got to... Come on. This is live TV, folks. This is just what's going to happen to you, too. Sometimes have these little troublesome problems. There we go. It's coming loose. It's rusty. All right, and out pops that cap. Now, I'm going to keep taking this apart. What I want to show you right now is we now have to drive this whole assembly back the other way because, as I say, the manufacturers, for some reason, don't ever want to make these things quite so you can take them apart by taking out one cap. Now, line that up again. Take our little hammer. And we'll send that through the other way. I think. Line that up. And give her another. There we're going. Awkward things to handle. They jump all over the place on you. If you have a friend, get him to hold the other end of the drive shaft for you. Now, we've got that cap stuck out. We're going to take it off. I'm going to set those aside. Now we can take this yoke right off of here. There's the yoke, and there's the little universal joint. Now, I just want to show you something here in close-up before we go any further. That little U-joint, this little cap goes on the end. You just saw us take it off. There's a little rubber seal in there. We want to always be careful when we're replacing these things that we get that rubber seal in the right place. And this little cap here has a little row of bearings inside of it. And there, I just got them off. I just knocked them all over the floor. There's what they are. They're little round rods, and there's a whole series of them inside that cap, and these are really dirty. There's a whole series of them inside there, and that's actually a bearing surface, and that allows this thing to turn freely on this, and these U-joints, about all they do is move like this. That's all they do their whole life. These ones have got about 100,000 miles on them, and there's not much wrong with them, but you can see this is a factory sealed grease installation, okay, and it's not greasable, and that grease has deteriorated and picked up an awful lot of dirt in its lifetime. We're going to take these out the other side, put this aside right now. Back to the big hammer. We've got to shear the plastic going this way. We've sheared that off. Let's drive it down. And that cap, I hit that so hard it went right through. I must be gaining strength. And my hammer's getting heavier. And we may be able to get this. Yes, all right, we've got our old cross kit out. All right, there you see it again. Throw it away, it's out of here. Now, these little holes in here, we want to clean out. I got a little piece of sandpaper here, our emery cloth. Just clean these out a little bit for rust. Just take a little bit of the corrosion out and it'll make those new caps slip in a lot nicer. Just like that. Do the same on this side. Now, something that's very easy to do when you're reassembling universal joints is to get the caps caulked. So you want that clean and smooth as you can get it. There we are. That looks good. Now, our universal joint kit that we got, like I mentioned, is a jobber universal or made for replacement, and it has these little grooves. And what we're going to do, rather than pounding this thing back together, we're going to press it together with this vise. Now, these caps we've got to take off very, very carefully. We want to pull these off of this joint. We're going to set them down, keep them very clean. We'll just take 2 off for now because that's all we need to work on. All right, now this universal joint is greasable. You can see the little hole there, and we've been supplied with a little grease nipple to put in that we'll do when we're all done our banging around here. Now to assemble this, first off we've got to slip this little cross-kit into here, like so, and get it set up in there. Now we've got to put the caps in one at a time, and we're going to push them in or squeeze them in with this vise, but there's a very critical little part of the procedure that we have to follow here right now. Now, let's get my big hammer out of the way. We're done with it for now. We're going to open this vise up. I want to show you something. This little row of ball bearings that I mentioned in here before, we have to be sure that we get them started properly on this little shaft. To do that, we'll push this U-joint as far as we can this way, and we'll fit this on. We kind of want to feel. That feels good. That's on there. We'll push it as far as we can. All right, and we're going to squeeze that piece there into this housing. Now, on the other side, we've got this one. And here's the problem. We can't squeeze both of these in at the same time. Now, what some people do is tap this along a little bit. We'll just see if it'll move that easily for us. We'll go down to a smaller hammer. Remember, we want to keep this piece of the cross-kit held against this so that none of these bearings get dislodged. Now I think probably we're far enough that we can get this cap to start on this side. And this is a critical part. When we put this cap in, we can't have any of these bearings getting misaligned on us. So I want to push that in, and then we'll move this piece across, our cross-kit, we'll move it across a little bit so that it engages the bearings on both sides. And from there on, all these little rod bearings, like I said, are standing this way, and we've got this started in them. Now we're going to squeeze. We'll give it the big squeeze here. You can use a press for this if you got one, but a vise will work good if you've got a 4-inch vise or better. You've usually got enough power. Now, we're going to squeeze those in. Like I say, we've got our cross-kit started in both sets of bearings. We're going to squeeze. Now, something you may have to do to help this along a little bit from time to time is to tap it gently with a hammer out there. And that relieves the stress because these yokes will bend inward and they'll want to bind. So we just tap that a little. We've got that, pushing that in, and there we go. Now we haven't got a lot of time. We've got this one all the way in, but I want to, well, we'll keep going and see if we can get that other one to come. Yeah, there we go. It's coming on in. Oh! I'm going to have to call for assistance from the cameraman here. Let's tap that side of the yoke out. One more. There we are. Let's tap that side of the yoke out again. Good. Now I mentioned little snap ring retainers we got here. We're going to put inside here to replace the plastic that we don't have because we don't have a factory installation. That's the little snap ring, and it fits this little groove right here. And I'll show you how to put that in. You've got to put it in that position like that, and we're going to tap it here once with a hammer, and it's going to go in there. I hope. Ready? Just watch that little snap ring. Well, I can't say that on TV. There we are. It's in. That's it right there, folks. It's in there. We got to squeeze this a little more. We got to get this other side. Our groove has not quite come into sight. There it is right there now. You can see that little groove, and we got to put that last snap ring in there. Okay, just like we did the other one. I'm going to do that. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll put the other half of the yoke on and finish this up. We'll be right back. I'll get this one done. You join us in a minute. Welcome back. We're kind of rushed for time. This is a big job, but we're going to save some money by doing it. I've got the last cap into place. I put this other side in, and I just want to remind you Okay, this is a more difficult half to get on than the first half, but you can do it by following the same principles, working back and forth. We're going to tighten this up and push this cap in and get that last snap ring into place. And like I said, you may have to tap a little bit in here. And that's just to relieve the stress on these things because these joints will flex. Okay, and you've got to get them in far enough to get that groove open. Now, that last little snap ring, as I mentioned, you can see them there. I'm going to put that in after we finish up because we're in a hurry right now. I mentioned a grease nipple to you, and I'm going to put that in. I'll just show it to you. It came with that universal joint. It's just a standard little grease nipple, and it screws right into the side of that U-joint, that crossget. We'll just put it in there right now. Tighten it up. If I can get it started. There we are. Tighten it up, and now you've got a greasable universal joint, which you didn't have before, which means you can put the old gun on it, give it a shot like that, and with universal joints we just grease until you see grease bulge out inside those little rubber seals I mentioned. All right, remember I got to put that one cap back on. Now one little tip here, folks, sometimes when you do this and you feel this, it'll be quite tight, and what you have to do there is just relieve the stress. You do that by just tapping these yokes. Just tap them with a hammer on the outside and they'll come loose. All right, they'll loosen up and they'll be fine when you put them back on. Let's flip this end for end. One last little note. I mentioned the little horseshoe pieces we took off. All right, I'm going to put a new U-joint in this end too, but just remember they're the ones that go back on over there. This is a little easier to see than what was on the car, okay? But that's how they fit back on. And try not to bend these or damage these because they are hardened metal. All right, and try to take care of these little screws because they are special fine threaded screws and they're real high tensile strength. If you lose one of those, don't go down to your hardware store and buy another one. All right, try and get the original equipment. This is the easy end U-joint, so I saved it till after the show to do. But I hope you learned something about U-joints, and if you're careful and take your time and think it through, I'm sure you can all do it. Thanks for joining us this week on Mechanic at Large. We'll see you next week.